Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for April 14th through 20th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 1 show, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 2 books. This is the last video that I'm recording in Strasbourg because tomorrow we go on to Rheims, and then after that it'll be Paris, so we can go home. That's not happening for a couple of weeks though, but I'm just saying that's how the rest of this trip is gonna go. We did, however, during this week spend an overnight in Metz where we were visiting with friends and just seeing this very small town, and that was really, really nice. Speaking of being home soon, the first book that I finished this week is The Body in the Back Garden. This one actually takes place basically where I live on Vancouver Island, except for it's in a fictionalized place, kind of between 2 places where I have lived. This one is all about this guy who used to spend his summers with his aunt in this very small town on Vancouver Island, but something happened when he was in his late teens that made it so that he never went back to this place. And he's going there now because she's actually tragically passed. She was hit by a car and they still don't know who did it. And in her will, not only does her cottage go to him, but also the store that she worked at for over 40 years in the community. While he's there just trying to sort out some affairs because he actually lives in Toronto and wants to get back to Toronto, he finds a body in the back garden, and obviously he can't leave because now he's a murder suspect. This is one of those cozy mysteries that kind of strains incredulity in the fact that he insists on being along for parts of the investigation, which obviously would not happen in real life, but as it turns out, the police chief or the captain or whatever the highest rank in this small RCMP detachment is, was basically his best friend in this area when he was growing up, and they just kind of lost touch, obviously, because he hadn't been coming back to this area. And I'm going to tell you why that is because I'm pretty sure it's part of the synopsis, so I don't feel that bad at kind of spoiling this for you, although you'll find this out later in the book. But he came out to his parents when he was 18 and he was on his way to university, and they completely disowned him and told all of the family not to talk to him anymore, which is absolutely terrible. And prior to coming back to Vancouver Island, he actually just recently broke up with his boyfriend in Toronto, so he's got stress going on everywhere. I found this one kind of fun. It was fun for me to actually kind of picture where this would be and kind of think of some of the small towns on Vancouver Island that I've been to and just basically place these locations in those locations. And as long as you're not somebody who's looking for something that would be true to actual procedure, this one's pretty good. The next book that I finished is Welcome to the Haeunam-dong Bookshop. This one takes place in South Korea, and this one was kind of cozy in its own different way. It's all about this whole cast of characters that work in and around this bookshop, whether or not they're customers, whether or not they're friends of the people at the bookshop, whether or not they're the people that actually roast the coffee beans for the barista in the bookshop. Since our central figure was a young girl, she's always wanted to be surrounded by books, so following something that happens in her life where she just basically wants to completely change gears, she decides to open this bookshop. And at first she does it completely by herself, and then after a while she actually hires a barista because she needs somebody else to manage that side of things. And as the bookshop keeps getting busier and busier, she keeps bringing on these different people to run different events. And it just really goes from there. This was so cozy and just so interesting to see all of these different discussions that people were having based on the different books they were reading, or based on different philosophy, or based on what they needed out of this community space. And it was just absolutely lovely. This is the first physical book I actually read this month because I picked this one up back when we were on Jersey and still had access to English-speaking bookstores. And the cover of it is absolutely adorable, and there's details throughout the book that I found really great. And it's just such a wonderful story. It's one of those stories where you just sit there and let it kind of happen, and it's just so quiet in its approach to things, and I just very much enjoyed it. As for the show I watched this week, we finished the last 3 episodes of Fallout, presumably the first season, because I'm sure they're going to make more. And yeah, there were definitely some twists, there were definitely some turns at the end there, and we're just going to have to see how that goes, because yeah, there were some certain things that I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about this, and now I want to see what's happening with this character. And that's about as spoiler-free as I can make that, obviously. That's kind of annoying, but for the rest of us who have never played the video games but are interested in watching the show, I don't want to spoil anything for you because there were certain things that I definitely didn't see coming. As for the movies we watched this week, all of them were watched last night, and we started out by going through this list that I have of movies that we eventually want to get to. And on that list, and something that we actually had access to on one of the many streaming apps we have, is Guns Akimbo. This one is about this guy who's played by Daniel Radcliffe, who basically feels a lot of frustration in his life, and he takes it out basically being a keyboard warrior, so telling people that they're doing bad things, that type of thing. And one day he does that on this forum for this website where it's actually basically this thing where they pit two people against each other until the death. And he's basically telling these people that this is disgusting, you shouldn't be doing this, all of that type of thing. But they actually track his IP address and decide that he is going to be the next contestant on this online program. And they decide to make it so he can't opt out of this by kidnapping him, drugging him, and actually surgically implanting guns to his hands. This calls for some ridiculous circumstances where he can't actually use his hands to do things, and sometimes when he's trying to use his hands to do things, the guns go off and that type of thing. I spent a lot of time near the beginning of this movie just being like, okay, you've gotten into your phone, you know you can like read your texts or whatever, please just call 911 and explain the circumstances to them so they can come to your door already knowing you have guns on your hands, and you can go from there. But does he do that? No, he just decides that he's going to leave the house in his bathrobe and his slippers and not wearing any pants with these guns on his hands and just like go try to meet this girl that he's meeting up with, his ex that he's trying to get back together with, and not really explain the circumstance very well. And yeah, it goes from there. It's all ridiculous circumstances. It's a ridiculous action movie. I very much enjoyed it, but also spent so much time just screaming at this character like, why wouldn't you do this one simple thing to fix your problem? Why wouldn't you do that? In this movie, his big adversary that he needs to go against is this woman. I believe her character name was Nix. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Nix, and his girlfriend was Nova, which is why I want to call her Nox because of the N-O or the N-I. Anyway, her name was Nix, and I was wondering if I had seen that actress in anything, so after that movie finished, I kind of looked through her IMDb and didn't really see anything that popped out immediately, but I did see that she was in a movie called The Babysitter. And I was like, I'm just gonna put this on because we have it on Netflix, and yeah, I'm gonna see if Chad can figure out what the connecting thing between these two movies is, and he actually figured it out fairly quickly. But I didn't tell him the plot of this movie. So in this movie, we've got this 12-year-old kid named Cole. He's kind of picked on by everybody, and he's the only kid on his block that still has a babysitter, so when his parents are going away, he has this babysitter that comes over, but he's absolutely in love with this babysitter, and he decides one night that he's going to stay up late to see what she gets up to when he's gone to sleep. And it's definitely not anything that anyone expected. This is one of those things where it's right in the synopsis if you want to know exactly what's going on, but because it's really fun to go into this not knowing what kind of movie it is, at least I thought it was, to make Chad go into it, because he's not necessarily the type of person that's going to go into a horror movie. This is definitely a horror comedy movie, and those are the types that I feel like I can just slide in there and be like, Chad, we're watching this, okay? This is definitely horror, there's definitely gore, there's definitely action sequences, but it's also horror comedy, so there's a lot of camp to this. I very much enjoyed that, and as this one was ending, I realized that they had also made a sequel. So after that, we watched The Babysitter Killer Queen, and this takes place 2 years later. The biggest thing that stuck out to me is these 14-year-olds are doing things that I'm like, it would make more sense to have these characters aged up a couple more years. So for example, when his best friend actually steals her dad's car, at least make it legal for her to be driving that car. Like, come on, she's 14. No, little things like that. I'm like, canonically these characters are a certain age, and you could have just set this whenever you wanted. You could have, and you didn't, and it's really weird to me. Anyway, it takes place a couple of years later. Nobody really believes him that all these things from the first movie happened, and then, yeah, some things happen, and some characters might reappear, and it's another ridiculous time. It's so corny, so ridiculous, so slapstick. Some of the jokes are just so funny. I very much enjoyed this. There is a chance that maybe they'll make a third one, and if they do, I will definitely watch it. On to the books I listened to, the first one being 19 Steps. This one I picked up because I saw that it was written by Millie Bobby Brown, who you might know from Stranger Things and then other productions, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize that this woman would have so much time to write a book. And it turns out that she wrote some of it, but she definitely had a ghostwriter as well named Kathleen McGurl. So that explains that, because I was starting to feel like a little bit of slacker in my life when this woman is in like several different TV shows and productions and producing things and all of that, and also was able to write this book. She co-wrote it. That makes me feel a little bit better, and I really, really loved this. I didn't know anything about this book. I didn't know the genre. I didn't know what it was about, anything like that. So it is really effective to put a celebrity's name on a book like this, especially because she did have a hand in and she did all of this research. But from my understanding, the actual writing of the book went to Kathleen McGurl. So I would feel better about her name actually being on that cover because I feel like she did the majority of the writing, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Anyway, this book is about a girl, I believe her name is Nellie, and if you listen to the audiobook, it's actually narrated by Millie Bobby Brown, which I appreciated because there's English characters and there's American characters, and she will flip the accent depending on who's speaking, which I appreciated. In any case, the majority of this book takes place during the Second World War, and it takes place in this very small area of London that was using this very specific subway station as their bomb shelter. So every time the air raid sirens would go off, that community would go into this very specific place, and something very tragic historically happened at this place, and that incident is exactly what all of this is about. Although there was a very high casualty number to this incident, I had never heard of it before, so it's interesting personally for me to go into this not knowing what I was getting myself into with this book, just see it play out in this historical fiction setting, and then look it up later and realize that this is based on true events. What I can tell you is I absolutely enjoyed my time with this book. I cried at one point. I thought it was brilliantly done. The other audiobook I listened to this week is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. This one is translated from Japanese, and this one has either 4 or 5 major chapters to it, and each of these chapters follows a different person, but all of these people are interconnected in this one community that is served by one particular library. Each of these characters ends up realizing that they need something, and they talk to the same reference librarian, and they end up figuring out what they actually need in life based on what they thought they needed by going to the library and looking for certain books. I really enjoyed this. At first I was a little conflicted that I was going to be reading a physical book about a bookshop and then listening to an audiobook about a library, and I thought I might get a little bit conflicted, but these are so stylistically different that I was able to separate them, which I appreciated. But in turn, both of them have what I want out of my bookish books, which is like this deep appreciation for books and book browsing and just being in places where you could learn things from these volumes that are just filled with paper. It's a thing that I love. I love going into bookstores even here when I can't read any of the books because it just makes me feel great about life. There is one thing about this book that I didn't really like, and that's the fact that almost every single character who goes to this reference librarian makes it a point to describe how big she is, and they just describe her in kind of grotesque ways, and I didn't need that. I just really didn't need that little bit of fat phobia shoved in there. So other than that, I really enjoyed this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye. The next book that I finished is Welcome to the Hainam Dong Bookshop. That's the word I tricked on? Not the fucking word that's in a different language, but bookshop?